So strategic oversight. So what is strategic oversight? And now we're going to talk a little bit about the practical tips for board's role on for overseeing strategic implementation. And I hope at this stage everybody can still hear and see everything well. We haven't lost any participants, so that's fantastic. It's all good with the audio, is it? Yep, I'm getting the thumbs up. Excellent. So some of the questions we have from people who've participated here tonight, we're not going to have time to be able to go through all of them. And just to let you know, we are planning to do some other events that will send you invitations through in partnership with Governance Evaluator. And we could just spend hours and days on all of these aspects. So for tonight, we're going to just focus on the strategic oversight and how that relates to your organisation. But some of the questions that people asked, which I'll just go over very briefly, is so how far out should you plan your strategic plan? Well, as Stephen said in the introduction, if your strategic plan isn't working for you, or if the environment changes significantly, or if it's not working for you, that is the time to review it. We don't have a fixed point of view about how long that needs to be. I'll come to a few questions in the notes in a few moments, but we'll just continue on for the time being. So we talked before about the importance of embedding your strategic plan within your organisation, but it's also within your community. What we see works best is that there is an internal event where the board chair or the president and the senior staff and the CEO come together with staff and actually launch it formally within the organisation. And that provides an opportunity to report back on the project and the process, but also in ways that will influence the way that people do their jobs to achieve the outcomes in the strategic plan. And so typically what we see works very effectively is that the board chair might give a small introduction about the methodology used and who was involved in the planning, and then hand over to the CEO for them to be able to talk about the operational aspects of that and how that will work. But of course you need to launch it to your community, and your community could be not just people who use your services, it could be key businesses, local councils, other service providers in aspects of community health or allied health, and it could even be key peak bodies. So the community is quite broad, and you could do that in a number of ways. It could be a virtual launch, but more importantly, it's about interacting with people and getting them to understand the direction and how they can be involved in shaping that direction. It's essential that the reports are done to the board, and what we recommend is restructuring your agenda so that the CEO and the direct reports can actually report on elements of the strategic plan in a very clear and concise way. And there's plenty of examples that we can share with you about that. And of course, there's also the staff reports to the board that need to be aligned with the strategic plan as well. We've had a question here. I've heard that the board directors say that the role of the board is to develop a plausible future for the organisation, and that the role of the CEO is to develop the strategic plan. What are your thoughts on this? Well, it's an excellent question. Our best experience is that strategic planning is done as a team with both the board and the CEO in partnership, and that we see as the best outcomes. Just recently I gave a presentation about governance, and just as I was about to walk in there, I realised that the CEO wasn't there, and I went and asked them and said, well, are you coming to be part of this? He said, oh no, well, it's actually just for the board. I said, no, it's actually part of your role as well, to support the board and to understand what your obligations are, to be able to give them the best information so they can make the best choices for the future. So, you know, our view on that is that it is a partnership, and it definitely needs to be developed both by the board and the CEO. So just closing on that, there are options for reports for the staff to come to the board meeting and present on their achievements and the work on the strategic plan. And as Stephen mentioned as well, getting those insights and inspiration from different locations and different methods like webinars like tonight conferences where you're actually bringing back new information and sharing that is really fantastic. And we find the best questions that the board can ask of staff when they make their reports is, what are the strategic implications of this? And that's a different way to frame it, especially if the staff reports become very operationalised and appears to be a lot of busy work. So to raise it up to more of a strategic level, that's a helpful question to ask. So in your review of your annual report, of course, it's something that you're reviewing constantly, but it's worth considering making a time to review the annual report. And we find the best time of year to do that is before you have your annual general meeting and before you have a changeover of the board, because what a great way to induct new board members into your organisation and into your board by having already done a review and introducing them to the strategic plan and inviting their contributions and ideas. So we ask 5 key questions. So what is working? What is not and what can we do? What did we miss? What can we add? And what can we take out? So what is working? This has to be a very honest conversation and not just glossing over things to say, yes, everything's working really well. But in fact, you know, some things, the approach might not have been the right approach, or it might not be yielding the benefits that you'd hoped. And you have to have an honest conversation without surprises to say, in fact, we've tried it and it's not working. And celebrate the successes of what is working. And what is not working, there has to be also a what are we going to do about it. So that could be continue to change the tactics, to do it in a different way. It could be, in fact, doing it in a completely different way, in a way that you might not have thought of. The other thing to ask is to say, what did we miss? Now, the methodology we just talked about of sending out the 5 key questions before you develop the strategic plan and invest something new. And what do we add? So there might be things that are just new announcements, new changes in policy, and there might be a reason that you want to add something. But of course, you might need to actually take out things. It might not be feasible with the resources that you have or other commitments to be able to do everything. So it's worth making that call and decision about what you don't consider. So that's a quick summary there of the strategic planning.